You know, I mentioned in that verse in Ether that says, "You receive no witness till after the trial of your faith." And I'd always grown up paying my tithing, but I'd never really reached a point where it was necessarily a trial for me. You know, I didn't have a lot of obligations when I was young or anything. And so the first time my faith in that law was actually tried was on my mission, and it was early in my mission, and it came from realizing that I was going to, teach a family about the law of tithing who, was in abject poverty. This was in Honduras, and it was the Velasquez family. They had 6 children. They lived in this very small home that was made had cardboard walls, a dirt floor, and a big mango tree for their roof. That's what kept the rain out. And Brother Velasquez's dream was to build an adobe brick house for his family, because his job was to make adobe bricks. He'd worked for this man for several years making adobe bricks, and he just wanted more than anything to have a real home out of adobe bricks and not the cardboard walls. And he'd been saving for a long time, and he had a wall built that was about 4 feet tall, and it went around a little corner, and that was his start. But it was going to take him a long time, to do this house. And I just thought, and our lesson was coming up to teach him about tithing, and I just thought, how do I tell, like, he barely makes enough money to feed his family.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, how do I ask him to pay 10%? And I was wrestling with it. And my companion told me, he said, "Elder Jackson, don't you have a testimony of tithing? Don't you believe that the Lord will bless them if they pay tithing?" And I said, well, I thought I had a testimony of it, but it's different when you're faced with, like, making a promise to someone and promising them that God's gonna, because I'm out of control. Like I have to trust that God's gonna do that for them, and it's not gonna hurt them. And I remember going very nervously to Brother Velasquez's house and do that lesson, and it was and I was the one to teach that principle. And I taught him about tithing, and I shared with him the verse in Malachi 3 that bring all the tithes into the storehouse and prove me, saith the Lord, to see if I will open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, and there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I shared that with him, and he looked at me and he said, "Elder Jackson, do you mean to tell me that all I have to do to have the Lord open the windows of heaven and bless my family is give him 10% of everything that he's blessed me with? Why didn't someone tell me about this sooner?" And I just blew me away that was his reaction. I was so nervous. I thought he would get angry or something. And,
what a perspective.
Yeah. And it totally changed my perspective too. Yeah. And so that family ended up getting baptized and paying tithing out of the very little that they had. And not long after their baptism, a massive rainstorm came through that town, and it wiped out his wall, completely destroyed the wall that he had spent so much time, building. Yeah. And I was devastated. That wasn't the opening of the windows of heaven that I had envisioned would happen, was to have a rainstorm destroy his house.
Almost the opposite.
Yeah, the opposite. And I thought, how do I go back and face him, but we went back. Oh. And I remember him coming up to me, he just had this huge smile. He shook my hand. He said, "Elder Jackson, how are you?" I said, "Brother Velasquez, I'm so sorry about your wall." And he just looked at me and he said, "Elder Jackson, you never said it would be easy. You just said we have to trust in God and trust in his timing. And that's what I'm going to do." And again, his faith just, it was definitely a but if not kind of faith that he had. And we continued to pray for him. And a short while after, we went back, and he said, "Elder Jackson, I need to tell you about our tithing miracle." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "My boss heard about what happened to my wall with the rainstorm, and he called me in at work, and he said, he told me that I had always been a faithful employee. I've worked for him for so many years. And he says, I heard about your house. And he said, what I want you to do, he says, I'll provide all the materials. And if you want to stay after work each day and make bricks for your home, you can take those bricks home and get your house done. So he donated all the materials to make those bricks. And he was so excited. He said, the Lord blessed me by destroying my wall so that my boss would bless me in that way. And he said, the Lord is so kind. God is so good. But you talk about you receive no witness until after the trial of your faith. For such a new convert to be so new in his testimony and to have something that devastating happen, but to just look on it as, whatever God puts us through, we need for a reason, and I'm just going to trust him. It is something that's actually helped me throughout trials